Alright, let's go to the Occult Crescent. Expedition Manager. The Expedition Manager wishes to speak to you. Funny you should show up now. I was about to go over my expedition report. With all that's happened, it's turned into quite the yarn. Perhaps you'll be willing to listen. Right, here goes. Plotting an eastward course from High Tide Harbor, Cactuar and his veteran crew set forth for Shade's Triangle, resolved to uncover the mysteries of the treasured stretch of ocean. After days of steady sailing, they had laced their eyes upon the Occult Crescent. But something strange was afoot. The isle shifted and shimmered like a mirage, confounding all attempts at approach. Just as the crew began to despair, an unknown force seized the ship, guiding it towards the island. According to the daring adventurer and valued expedition member Patios, this occurred moments after a strange voice rang out in her mind. Though it remains unclear, it is plausible this mystery speaker and the ship steering force are somehow linked. Once ashore, the crew entered the Phantom Village. Here, one of its long-abandoned structures, they made a startling discovery. A wizened but welcoming old fellow called the XIV, seemingly afflicted with the Tomberry curse. Learning of Cactuar's plan, the XIV readily offered his expertise, yet it soon became apparent that his expertise had been sealed away. The only means to recall being to hear what the adventurers saw and learned during her excursion. The mystery deepened. Further, when Iris, a tiny familiar, likely summoned by the isle's shadowy architect, appeared out of nowhere, prompting many questions but providing few answers. For now, she seems content to observe the expedition from a distance. As the crew explored more of these strange shores, a picture of the isle's true purpose began to take shape. By all accounts, it appears to be a repository of knowledge and monuments of the 5th Astral Era. To keep these precious relics safe, the Occult Crescent is surrounded by a magical ward, separating it from the outside world. Similar magics are also believed to prevent the expedition's vessel leaving port. Among the island's ruins stand 2 spires, the Tower of Blood from on the south horn, and its northern counterpart, the Tower of Magic. While both are considered key to unraveling the isle's secret, it is the latter in which the Occult Crescent's architect is taught to reside. An island-wide ward, keeping knowledge within the interlopers without. A mysterious entity capable of wielding such magics. What will transpire when their true identity is unveiled? Or something along those lines. Did that sound right to you? Yeah, that's basically what happened. Huzzah! Thanks for listening. I'm sure there'll be plenty more to write about before expedition ends. I can't help but to worry about the crew though. Say, why don't you go and pay them a visit? No doubt you'll be needed back on the island sooner than later. Excellent. I presume you'll be using this ethereal current like you usually do. Give old Cactuar my regards when you arrived. Yeah, sure. Speak with Cactuar in the Phantom Village. Alright. Good to see you, Patios. I don't blame the fellow for feeling concerned. But morale is high. Okay. Morale is high, despite us being trapped here. And I've got good news besides. We're finally being cleared to route to the north. It took some doing, mind. Scrambling across sheer cliffs, battling upstream through raging rapids, and wandering our way through gloomy caves until we finally reached a basin of sorts. We soon set up a camp among some ruins, and set to work establishing a path. Anyway, how about we head straight to the North Horn? With you back in the fold, we can get straight to work. Good, I'll let the archive know. We'll be waiting for you over yonder. My Jeffroy. With the door to our base cap running, we're ready to proceed at a moment's notice. That said, the usual precautions apply. We're better off sticking together en route. I've not journeyed to the North Horn since emerging from the sarcophagus. I wonder what curiosities await. I shall join you. Oh, a change of heart. Perhaps new orders to help us. I will simply be observing your companion. Well, I suppose she was keeping an eye on us this whole time. Don't see any harm in her tagging along. Right. When you're ready to depart, just say the word. Occult Reunion. So I still have my bard. 780 gear, okay. Phantom gear, okay. Called a trader? Oh, so this is where you get the gear. This phantom gear. The 780 phantom gear, okay. Good to know. Bald? Boots, okay. Other. Supplier here. We're preparing and purchasing items. Our goals here are twofold. Uncover the truth of the Occult Crescent, and ensure the crew makes it home in one piece. Now, I reckon finding the Isle's architect is key to achieving both. Given that he's probably holed up in the Tower of Magic, finding a way in should be our first order of business. According to our scouts, the fiends in this part of the island are damn sight tougher than the beasties we've encountered. If you find yourself struggling, you'd best head back to the South Horn for a spot of training. I should also mention that the surveyors have turned up some interesting new trinkets. Speak with the crew if the trickles your fancy. Oh, and don't forget to attune with the camp's Aetherite while you're here. My friend, I wish to have a quick word with you. Let me know once you've completed the preparations. I was hoping we could discuss the soul shards. You know, those crystalline records of martial methods conceived by 12 city-states of Eld. As you no doubt recall, I posited that they would only function upon the isle itself. Was my hypothesis correct? Part of me had wondered whether you in particular might be able to wield the shard's power beyond the ward, evidently not. In truth, I've also been pondering the reason you were summoned here in the first place. If the voice you heard belongs to the island's architect, then seeking him out in the Tower of Magic ought to provide answers on that front too. In other words, the time to venture forth has come once more. The North Horn beckons. Crown of Karnak, the South Shadow Deep, the Suspended Masonry, Shrine of Spheres, Unhallowed Hamlet, North Shadow Deep Shore, Sinking Chancery, the Morrow Wood, and the Moldering Streets. Interesting. Back on the South Horn, the only way into the Fork Tower was by a way of aerial node that appeared during those auroral mirages. Assuming a similar node exists on this part of the island, we ought to look for the structure housing it, If my hunch is correct, there may be a confluence connected to the tower nearby, so keep your eyes peeled. I'll also be taking a look around myself. Get in touch via Link Pearl if you find anything. Examine the confluence all over there. Alright, so I guess we start exploring. Oh yeah, I need to get the map, right? Where'd you get the map for this area? Is it a map or something? No. Where do we get items? Occult Crawler, great. That reading's down. Okay. Trader? No. Is it mobile exchange? I need the North Horn. No, not the roll. Where's it? Final FFXIV. Gold coffer. Blue. North Mountain. It's the orchestral roll. Body armor. He augments the gear. Okay. That's the bow tennis. Expedition Lancer over there. Skywatcher. Stop the Skywatcher. Oh, okay, this just tells you the temperature. Okay, the weather. Alright, well, I don't know where to get the... Alright, let's go start exploring. Oh, we're on top of a giant ruin. That's pretty cool. It's raining right now, so we can't get a good view. Crescent. Well, I'm level 20, so I should be a high enough level for this. I need to get to the confluence over there. That guy's 21. I need to get some level ups too. Let's see how strong the enemy is here. I need to attune myself to the Aetherites. I might be too low level though. I need to level up. I'm only level 20 right now in the Occult Crescent, so I need to level up more so I can catch up to the levels of the enemies here. Well, let's see how strong the zoo is. Yeah, I'm too high level. I'm too low level for this. I need to level up too. Can I get across from here? Oh, you can't swim in the water. Great. what is this fight gonna be like? I was close. Okay. Critical engagement. Where's it? Up there? Okay. Okay, let's just get that. Just get that shard. There we go. Alright, let's go to the next engagement. We can do the quest after. Dragon chimera thing? Oh, that was chaotic. Holy crap. Okay, so yeah, let's go to critical engagement. It's all the way over there. Confluence. Let's check this out. Well, this does appear to be a confluence. The flow of Aether is barely perceptible. Regardless of whether this location is actually linked to the tower or not, Cactuar will wish to hear your findings. Well, it's definitely a confluence. And this structure, almost identical to the one on the South Horn. I think it's safe to say this is where the ethereal node ought to be. But something's not quite right. I'm not sure if arcane trickery is to blame, but this pavilion's completely inert right now. No point in us pondering out here, though. Let's head back to camp and see if we can't chip away at the archive's real seal some more. How do I get to the middle island? Could probably get the... Oh, I could probably get it from here. Or the bridge, maybe? Maybe if I get on top of the bridge. Nope, can't get there from there. So this does not reach the island. It's probably this area here. Up here, that's probably the only way to get there, right? So let's get the shards, now we can teleport here. There we go. Cactuar, tell me you found the confluence by the pavilion. Pray share more detail. Judging by your account, I believe the confluence does indeed connect with the Tower of Magic. Ah, there goes the familiar sensation of seal eroding. Any ideas as to why we can't use the ethereal node? Several, but let me first touch upon the Forked Tower themselves. Over 1500 years ago, the island's architect foresaw a calamitous disaster, and thus sought to preserve a facet of all civilization here on the Occult Crescent. But to do so would mean storing the very knowledge that imperialed the world in a single location. Measures to prevent its misuse would be essential. Hence the word and all the storms in the Shades Triangle. Precisely, and it is the Forked Towers that form the backbone of this approach. The Forked Tower of Blood to project those deadly storms, and the Tower of Magic to maintain that impenetrable ward. Both undertakings require highly advanced techniques and near constant monitoring, which is why the towers are manned. As I've said before, I believe it is the architect himself who resides in the Tower of Magic. So the towers are both conduits for all that magic, and humble abodes for the overseers. Seems like a lot of bother just to keep one tiny island hidden from prying eyes. Entirely packed with potential world-ending knowledge. Even prying eyes don't deserve to be trapped against their will. A tiny island packed with potentially world-ending knowledge. So, you feel that way? Feel the same way? Either way, the Tower of Magic is the focal point of the ward. All of the island's ethereal currents converge upon it. If the confluence you discovered so greatly diminished, we must assume all is not well with the island's Aether. Let us begin our next investigation. Knowledge leveled up. Yeah. My knowledge. I am knowledgeable. Let's repair real quick. And what else do you want to say? Cactuar? So the island's atrial currents are in disarray. Come think of it. The landscape is completely different to what we saw down south. It feels warped, unnatural even. We ought to investigate what caused these changes. And I suggest we start surveying multiple confluences, That should give us a clear picture of what's happening. I have a mind to accompany you on the excursion, that way I can immediately share what the seal's undoing reveals at each site. Don't need to pay me any hand, though. In the interest of avoiding my ultimately demise at the hands of some fell fiend, I shall follow stealthily at a safe distance. In that case, so I suggest you concentrate your search on the runes in the area and check for abnormalities. Speaking of runes, there's a CE just in front of us here. There's an engagement right in front of us. Let's go there. The Forbidden Folios. That's the name. Interesting. Let's just follow that big giant cactus there. That big giant cactus, yeah. The cactus, sumo cactus. That's what it's called. let's do the another sea. This sprawling structure bears the hallmarks of Skallic craftsmanship, but my eye is drawn to the extensive flooding. A surfeit of water or aspected aether appears to have disrupted the area's natural balance. One of the crew told me that the ancient city of Scala now lies at the bottom of a loch. Though I state the obvious, 'twas not always so. The city's submerged state is the result of calamitous flood, not some architectural quirk. In other words, if one sought a faithful reproduction of Skallic civilization as it stood in the Fifth Astral Era, replicating the subsequent flood would be completely anachronistic. Well, at least we have further evidence of aetherial abnormalities. Onward to the next rune. Oh, there? Okay, let's go there then. Which one's this? Ahead of the competition. Alright. Oh, what is that thing? Phantom Hydra? Oh, come on. Nice, we did it. I think I got all the shards, right? Yeah, I got all the shards. So I can teleport anywhere I want on the map now. Not even the ravages of time could dim the ladder of Nimian ingenuity. Of course, the Nim of my time was not so unconcerned with gravity. This strange floating aspect was not an inherent feature of the city, though. Having examined the confluence, the underlying phenomenon is clear. Excess wind energies have weakened the bonds between building and ground, creating the landscape you see before you. Increasingly, this result seems somewhat intentional, but that hardly aligns with the goal of accurately preserving the 5th Astral Era history. Alas, there's not much else to glean. Let us seek out other rooms. There's probably a boss fight on this. There's a pot thing over there in the pot water. Okay. There's a fight over there, but there's already people there. Critical engagement? Where is it? Up there? Lost on the wind? Okay, let's go there. Survey point, give me that. Oh, what is this place? Kind of spooky. I want to do shower. was cool. Freaking jump level up. Nice. See if I can sneak into that town there. Something tells me we ought to not linger here. Thankfully, I was able to examine several aetheril flows en route. Something has sapped the area's earth aspected energies, leading to decline and purifying potential of the soil. An veritable mold invasion. You. Mold. Now I understand that the lost city of Antipor is likewise riddled with rot. Yet I find it difficult to believe those moldering forces could sweep as far as here. Not only is the North Horn isolated from the rest of the isle, the Occult Crescent itself is miles away from the nearest port. Besides, if those false powers had somehow spread here, I would expect the entire region to be infested. At least we are beginning to glimpse the sheer extent of the environmental decay. It is fortunate the nearby aetheril currents were still somewhat detectable. On that note, I suggest we make our leave of these streets before we ourselves sprout mold. Yeah, let's leave this bare area, this moldy area for sure. Yep, let's leave. Oh, there's a critical engagement right there. Let's do that. carbuncle. Okay. On this occasion, I scarcely need to examine the confluence. It is all too clear the vicinity is being subsumed by the void. In ancient Mach, mages would infuse their serenal chambers with astral aspected ether to facilitate their summoning arts. But that's not to imply the city was overrun with summoned void scent. If this settlement lies in such a state, it can only mean one thing. Well, I've now seen enough to support my hypothesis, and I imagine Cactuar will wish to hear that too. Let us return to the camp post-haste. That was quite the journey. I'm not sure I'd have made it without you. Now, all the ruins we saw exhibited ethereal abnormalities. The Nimian remains now float skyward due to excess wind energies, and the scalding structure was inundated with water, while the Endabatori and Maki remnants are beset by earth and astral expected imbalances, respectively. I also sense that the area surrounding the camp has been parched dry by an excess of fire expected ether. In short, the ethereal balance of the North Horn has completely collapsed. I believe the architect used the region to model the impact of such drastic ethereal changes. The ruins here met similar fate to their Eorzean counterparts. To what end the architect conducted this experiment, I do not know, but these conditions stem from excessive use of Aether in accordance with each civilization's unique history. Perhaps disrupting the flow of Aether to the Tower of Magic was part of his plan, then. Not that I have the foggiest idea what he would want to do. Nor have I. To jeopardize previous remnants of the Fifth Astral Era in this way contradicts the Isle's very purpose. Regardless, if your theory is correct, I'm afraid we'll have a difficult time tracking down the tower via ethereal flows, though the fact the pavilion exists at all ought to provide some encouragement. Are you suggesting that we might be an ethereal node? That there might be an ethereal node that means of activation? After all. I love a good mystery, as much as the next fellow, but we're practically drowning in the bleeding things. Any road, before we begin to solving them, I reckon we ought to take a stock at what we've gleaned so far. I ordered the crew to continue investigating the ethereal currents in the area. While they're roaming around, I thought we might consider the mystery from a fresh angle. We've established that the Occult Crescent is a museum of sorts of the Fifth Astral Era, right? But here on the North Horn, these relics and ruins were deliberately meddled with, seemingly in the name of replicating later calamities. Why so? Fortunately for us, there's someone right here who ought to know. Iris, why don't you tell us a little about your master? As previously stated, I'm here to observe, nothing more. How about revisiting a conversation we've already had then? You wouldn't begrudge me that, would you? When we first met, I asked the archive whether he'd summoned you. Do you remember that? You were adamant that the wizened little wretch hadn't. Were you speaking truthfully? Indeed, that much was true. That much, In that case, it's fair to assume Iris's master is the ultimate source of wisdom of the Isle, the Architect. Now, my understanding is that a summoner and their familiar are usually bound by an ethereal flow. Do you reckon we could leverage that to reach the tower somehow? We ought to examine Iris more closely. To conduct a tower examination, I'm afraid we would need to reduce Iris to pure ether. She might be a bothersome little scapegrace, but I wouldn't wish that upon her. I suggest we find and examine another of the artifacts, familiars, preferably one would have no qualms of vanquishing. We came across a fair few familiars while roving down south, none of them particularly pleasant, mind. I'm sure North Horn has its own fair share of summoned creatures. Inspecting the Aether of any one of them could further our investigation. I might add that the denser their Aether, the more information we stand to glean. Of course, such familiars tend to be rather formidable. Come to think of it, when I passed through the forest during our previous excursion, I spotted a large winged creature with a crest of green feathers. Perhaps we could seek them out there. I'm guessing he means the wooded area north of the lake. Either way, sounds like a job for you, our resident fiend feller. Make sure to hack off a chunk of them for us. Hear ye? We're gonna continue Occult Crescent Northhorn next time on Final Fantasy XIV.